much interpretation of the actual words. Day 3 was meticulous about use of language. Particle is design examples of confusion in students' writings. They will tell students' mistakes. Garbled. List of holders include the following: a pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for Richard's hands that deliver us from evil. They lived in the Sahara Little did she realize that they were going. メティキュラスくんマジでnot denying about it. Leading in such areas from papers, compositions, and task papers, advice and joy. Take us. Howlers. Fair comprehensive list of howlers. Howlers include the following. Congratulations to the she says. Richard says. Socrates died from overdose of wedlock. King Arthur conquered the Danes. check. I read these passages. People are learning about the side of blood, or horror, desisting horror from most forms of violence throughout to avoid some of the movies now being shown at their local cinemas. Producers have learned that films that scare the patrons out of their seats ironically put millions of fans into those seats, keeping them blood-blending goose pimple-inducing spectacles that flash across the screen. Keeping them engrossed in the goosebumps. People who are learning about the side of blood. Who are scared about. Of course, each movie carries with it writing that indicates suitability for certain age groups, either because of its subject matter, language, presentation, or level of violence. Pictures with a G rating approved for all audiences, while at the other end of the scale, those are given an NC-17 rating for adults only, with no children allowed under any circumstance. Getting an R rating indicates that the movie is restricted. No one under 18 made it without a doubt, but some Hollywood muggles consider the R to be the magnet that ensures box office success. We can be sure that as long as Chuck films ring up a merry tune on the cash registers, producers will not refrain from making them. Will not recoil from making them. Directors who specialize in making gory films involving monsters, vampires, and brutal serial killers boasted in a college lecture that his work was in good taste. One student who disagreed with it was provoked to interject that in his opinion the diet of shock clock movies was in worse taste than those pictures that contain vulgar language and nudity. At least they are honest, declared. The 20th century established this when the general American public started to hear about the AIDS virus in the 1980s. There was a major concern, but no real alarm. After all, some said it was a problem solely for intravenous drug users who shared dirty needles, and for homosexual community. But as the numbers of afflicted people grew during the 1980s and during 1990s, we began to blah the tragic news stories more closely. We began to scrutinize the tragic news stories more closely. The death of young people like Ryan White and Kimberly Burgels, not members of that risk groups referred to above, convinced us that what was first regarded merely as nefarious illness was actually a threat to the general community. Virulent threat to the general community. In the mid-1980s, medical researchers were optimistic that the vaccine for AIDS would be found in short order. Astute medical researchers were optimistic that the vaccine for AIDS would be found in short order. Those predictions proved to be inaccurate. In October 1992, former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop said that he doubted we would ever find a cure for the disease, with over 200,000 Americans already having succumbed to the ineffectual solicit 33, right? 35 vexatious killer, and another 300,000 who were HIV positive and could contract a full-blown form of AIDS. Coop's statement sent chills throughout the country. A prominent AIDS expert, however, took issue with Koop. The fight will be difficult, said Dr. Holly Smith, but we'll find an answer very shortly. Although there is still no cure or sure HIV vaccine treatment, consists of antiretroviral therapy, which is effective in slowing progression of the disease. The Egyptian earthquake in October 1992 killed 600 residents of Cairo and hospitalized thousands of others, many of whom were expected to succumb to death as a result of their injuries, especially hard hit toward the people who inhabited the city's slums, who had to seek nani in those government buildings. Seek sanctuary in those government buildings, schools, and factories that remained standing. Religious Muslim groups were active in providing relief to the survivors in the form of flood, water, blankets, and tents to house the more than 300 families made homeless by the disaster. Believers took the opportunity to spread the message that the earthquake was of worse things to come. Harbinger of worse things to come, and that a wayward population must follow God's laws if they expected to rise to the heaven, ascend to heaven. Throughout history, following volcano eruptions, hurricanes, tidal waves, and other calamities that periodically annihilate or afflict mankind, religious leaders have used such occurrences to bring the people back to their faith. Since many Egyptians had expressed unhappiness about the government prior to the earthquake, there was a good chance for religious Muslim groups to win new converts by showing that the answer to recover was not through man's efforts but through God's. The reading of the will. One 4 weeks after the funeral, the immediate family of millionaire Charles Hudson was gathered in the Oval Office to hear the reading of the deceased will. Deceased will. Mr. Hudson's wife, 30 years his junior. 5 years my junior. He's 5 years younger. 10 years my junior, was prepared for bitter jurisdiction. With his former wife and his son, the lawyer Don Rollins anticipated the night session. Anticipated the turbulent session because he was the only one who was cognizant of the contents of the revised will. The Hudson had altered John up 6 months prior to his death. The current Mrs. Hudson, attired in a smart black clothing, expected that she would receive the island's share of the estate. The former Mrs. Hudson felt that she was entitled to most of the estate, since she was practically none at the present time. Indigent at the present time, despite her substantial alimony payments. Lower Rollins cleared his throat and began to read. To my present, suppose I leave my town house where she can continue to store the jewels, shoes, dresses, and furs she accumulated in 2 years of shopping and marriage. To my son, who was put off finding a career until my estate enriched him, I leave the sum of $10 for cab fare to the employment office. To my former wife, whose skirmish implacable. Implacable behavior tolerated for 3 decades. I leave my beach house where she can continue to work on the tan, something that she prized above our happiness. To the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, I leave the remainder of my entire estate, knowing that they will put it to better use than anyone in this room. The lawyer was wrong. No cries, silence, supreme silence reigned among the shocked audience.